All right. All right. So today's Tech Day will be about open source and how you can help with open source development. So open source is basically an offshoot of the free software movement. And what I mean by source is source code, which is basically the human readable form of computer code. Now, how many of you use NVDA, the screen reader?
Yeah,
Not yet, I don't.
I do. Yeah.
All right. And how many of you use, well, there really isn't there is, but it's not very popular. There is an open source magnifier program, but but NVDA is open source, which means that anyone can view
iPhone has left the meeting alert.
or edit the software. Now, when and when you edit it, you can make
iPhone has joined the meeting alert.
when you edit software, you can make changes, you can make improvements, you can fix bugs, and then you can release the software to the community, either sending it back to the original project, the NVDA project, or you can, if the NVDA project doesn't accept it, you can make your own. And that is what open source it means. Now, there are differences between open source and free. Now, free, there are basically two definitions. One is just free as in no cost, or free as in food, or the other is free as in you can do anything you want with it, you can run it however you want, you can collaborate with others on it, and you can make copies of it and give it to your neighbor to help your neighbor. A little uh, uh, a bit of the standard sort of help your neighbor type ideal, and the more open definition of free as in is free as in speech, not free as in stuff. So and there are free programs that are free as in stuff and free as in speech, because I mean, why charge for something if people can just make it on their computer, compile it from the human code to the computer code and run it themselves. But there are, of course, products that are that cost things, but so you can't actually read the source. Now, there are things that that cost money but are open source, but they so basically you can either buy it and support the developer, or you can, if you know how, you can build it on your computer and have it for free. So as I mentioned before, open source is an offshoot of the free software movement, and it is basically good with the being able to view and edit the source code, but open source isn't as into the user rights, as in people can should if they make copies, they shouldn't sell it, or you're free to do this and do that. But open source is more common because of their amenable nature towards businesses, as in you can collaborate and all this, but you don't have to actually do this and that for the users. So nowadays we just call it free and open source. software, or FOSS. Now, the history of free software actually started with automobiles or cars, or whatever you want to call them, where one corporation had the patents for a part of the engine of cars, and so they were able to control who got the patents and charge whatever they wanted, and all that. Um, and if any company decided to poke the bear, they were sued. So that wasn't a very good arrangement. So Henry Ford, an independent automobile manufacturer at the time, decided to go against this corporation in court and won. And what he did was he shared these patents amongst the manufacturers for free. And that was the sort of open exchange of information. So in software, things started out like the open exchange of information because of the computer's beginnings in academic places and like universities or research labs. And eventually people began to see computer software as something that could be bought and sold, and so they began to companies began to buy and sell software or sell software to regular users without needing without giving away the source code. So that left users, especially in the age of where one thing had to run on many systems, not just Mac or Windows or Linux, but on many different types of computer, and the users could not modify their software in this age of monetization of software, could not modify it to run on a computer that they bought, which may be different from the computer that the software runs on. And that still happens today, but a little bit less often because technology is more cross-platform, which means it can run on many different systems. So one person, Richard Stallman, was not very happy with this, and so he launched the Free Software Foundation. He launched GNU, the GNU group first, and then launched the Free Software Foundation to kind of make managing that group a little bit easier. And he wanted to make a system based on Unix, which was owned by AT&T, and was originally pretty freely sourced, but then the patches became shareware or not free not free as in cost, and then the whole system you had to buy the whole system later on. So he launched the GNU project, and that's GNU. The G is not silent. And he had many different programs made that were free and open source, but he didn't have the underpinning software to communicate with the computer hardware, the kernel. He didn't have a kernel. So eventually, this guy called Linus Torvalds, he made the kernel for Linux. So nowadays, Linux has a good deal of usage by researchers and developers and even users. It does have a graphical interface. It's just the command line where you have to enter commands and press enter and read the output and do all that. It does have, it's like Windows nowadays. For accessibility, though, it's not the best because developers can do what they want. They are not bound to a standard, and they are not bound to accessibility either. So it's kind of a two-edged sword for us. We can possibly make projects accessible through the collaborative method of open source, but they not often are. Now we can use, Firefox and LibreOffice and stuff like that, but that's about it. We're pretty well bound to a few different programs. But on Windows and Mac, we do have NVDA, which is an open source screen reader. We have Braille Blaster, which is an open source Braille translation software. We do have, plenty of programs that are open source. And if you find one that you want to be accessible, you can actually request it through opening an issue on their GitHub page. Now, GitHub is a place where developers can collaborate and where users can give their issues or give feature requests or bug fixes. So there are and NVDAs on GitHub, different several open source programs for the blind and programs.
Hey, I gotta go.
Okay.
And I'd also like to point out, just a side note, Microsoft purchased GitHub, Devin. So I don't know if you were going to mention that, but that was a huge development in the open source world to have the evil empires. They like, yeah. So I don't know if you're going to go in that, and I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but
that's fine.
I did want to mention that, and if you want to talk about that, I find it very interesting. And that just happened last year. Yeah,
about last year, yeah. And it does mean a lot when Microsoft is embracing open source. For example, if you want to use Braille in their narrator program, that uses BRLTTY, which is a Braille driver, a collection of drivers for Braille displays, and LibLouis, which is a collection of Braille translation tables, so that you don't have to read computer Braille if you read Braille. So, and it's gonna keep on going with Microsoft embracing open source, and Apple uses open source programs on their Mac and probably on their iPad too, on iPhone too, at least deep down. So, open source has come a long way, and it's amazing that we can help develop. And on GitHub, you don't have to, you don't have to write software. You could write a book. You could write a blog collaboratively with other people or on your own and host it there, and other people could go and see it. So it's not always about developers. It could be any kind of project you want to do. So that's about all for the presentation. Are there any questions?
No.
I'd like to just say a few things here and just take about 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine.
And throw in my 2 cents while I got everybody handy. And like Devin said, I want y'all to understand the definition of free here that we're talking about is more of a freedom versus a cost factor. It is free in cost, and most organizations that adopt this policy usually they might have a version 4 sale, they might have a support contract, or they sell their not maintenance agreements, but technical support as a way to fund this. But generally, open source is done by volunteers. Volunteers from around the world use mostly GitHub. There are other types of source control, but like Devin said, we even use GitHub for our lessons. It's a neat application and it allows several people to contribute at the same time without stepping over each other's toes. And it's a magnificent way to do things like software, or I even have practically a task list, or you can set up a project, and I have a home project where I've got all my different honeydews on. So it's an incredible method of working together from people with all kinds of different skill sets. You don't have to write code. If you speak a different language, that's a good way to contribute. Documentation, and always like Devin said, issue requests so that people know, hey, I found a bug, and then you can actually see the progress. They'll talk to you. You'll have a conversation online about how the bug is being resolved, what happens. They might ask you for more information. It's a fascinating process to get into and watch happen. And this goes beyond just software. Open standards is something we really like to look at. DAISY, I don't know if y'all have heard of DAISY books, but that's an open standard for digital books versus something closed like EPUB. Or if you're familiar with MP3s or MP4 audio files, OGG is a competitor to that, that's open and not hindered by patents. We have a lot of issues with patent trolls. They go out and find these open source companies that use these different libraries like the ones Devin mentioned, and they say, oh, I've got a patent for this back in so-and-so, and basically they're just trying to bully the larger open source companies into paying them money. So it's really neat to watch this, and it has its own political climate, and there's always constant wars back and forth between developers, and pick a project. Usually there is a open source equivalent to some software you really like to use, and get involved. I'd really like to encourage y'all just to take a look. Has a open source version called Chromium. There's open source word processors, open source, you name it, audio recording. There's just so many different types of programs out there, and they are what you make of it. And I really think, like software, this is benefiting everybody. Knowledge should be shared and free. Textbooks. People are trying to open source college textbooks because the cost, the publishers are just really getting carried away, and it's prohibitive for a lot of people to be able to afford their college textbooks. So they have what's the version of Moodle that MIT started? edX. There's an open source. Moodle is open source, actually. It's an open source product that we've been using for 17 years now, and there's competitors to it, and just lots of stuff. And if y'all have questions, if y'all like to learn a little more about GitHub, let us know. If you're going to be in at any kind of software development or stuff, DevOps, that is definitely something you have to be proficient with, GitHub or source versioning, source control like that. But any questions? Anybody got anything else they want to add? Anything they'd like to hear? Well, I'm not going to say next week, but if you've got any suggestions for when we return. All right, shoot.
I know. Can you hear me?
I can now.
I do use NDVA, and I'll do like NDVA, which is a free the free source. That one of the things they're talking about.
Devin, why don't we send everybody a link to the GitHub page for NVDA, maybe the issue section, just so everybody can just look at it. You don't have to create an account, you don't have to log on, but you can browse and you can see all these people submitting problems. And release notes. I love checking out release notes, and they have roadmaps about features that are coming down the pack. That kind of stuff. We were talking earlier.
Just recently, one of the contributors released a a enhancement to the OCR functionality, which allows it to continuously scan. Like if you're watching a video, you can it's not out yet, but you can continuously scan the what do they call it, subtitles or whatever, and it'll read it to you, and yeah,
Cool.
it's amazing what they can do.
And it's the power of people worldwide, like I say, even speaking different languages, all working together toward a common goal, and it's a worthwhile endeavor. Anybody else?
Hey, Joel, I'm still working on a lot of those links to post about people that's editing their own videos and different things. So I'll probably have everything ready for you by the time y'all come back.
Fantastic. I'll definitely get that up.
I tried that iMovie and it was really good.
Yeah,
Awesome.
iMovie's pretty easy. Matter of fact, me and Justin's going to be doing a tutorial video that we're going to link up on YouTube about how to navigate the iMovie on the iPad, on the phone, and on your Mac. with using
Okay.
VoiceOver.
Cool. And what is that that YouTube channel called again?
Justin's channel is called Justin Holland Fitness.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know when it's going to be. I know we're going to be doing a live stream here in the next week or so, and yeah, I think we're going to be talking about health and fitness on that one. But eventually, we're going to get to doing a couple of tutorials and different things. We're going to try to pre-record them and then just upload them and not do a live stream.
Cool.
Anything else?
No, I'm going to try to call Glenn after a while, Joel, about what we talked about yesterday.
Sounds good. All right, guys. We're going to wrap it up here. I appreciate everybody showing up. And like I say, if you've got any suggestions for when we come back, shoot me an email, and I'll put Devin on it.
Devin, it sounds like you're the gopher.
It does.
Go-to, not gopher. He's the go-to guy. He's my go-to guy, not my gopher. But he is definitely jack of all trades for us here, and we do appreciate Devin and the great job he does. And guys, hope I get to talk to you before the Friday break. But if not, y'all all have a very safe 4th of July summer break, and it's good talking to everybody.
You too,
Joel.
Mr.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, all right.